Hey everybody, it's Miss A, and thanks for watching Math in Minutes. I'm going to do a couple lessons here. I was out last week, so I want to do a refresher lesson. So we're going to look at common denominators. And a common denominator is when you have two fractions and the denominators are equal, they're the same. So for example, if I have 3/8 and 5/8, they are common denominators. The denominators are even, they're equal. So when I have that, if I needed to compare them, I could just look at the numerator. Well, the task that the students have been asked to do is to actually create common denominators. So for example, if I have 1/4 and 2/8, what the students are asked to do is to look at these denominators and think, here's my smaller denominator, I have the number 4, I have the number 8, what do I multiply times 4 to make 8? And the students would know that that should be 8. 2 times 4 equals 8. So now I have denominators that are the same. How I apply that to a fraction is I multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So I have 1/4 times 2/2, because remember I need to make 8 on the denominator, and 1 times 2 is 2. So what I have is 1/4 is actually equivalent. 1/4 is equivalent or equal to 2/8. So how I told the children to really think about this is to, when you have your fraction, let's say we have 7/15 and we have 3/5. When we have two fractions and we have to come up with a common denominator, don't worry about the numerators at first, just think about those denominators. So the number 15 and the number 5. And think to yourself, what do I multiply times 5 to equal 15, and I write it this way. So 15 equals blank times 5. Well, 5, 10, 15, so it's 5 times 3. Now once I have that information, I then can apply that to my fraction. 3/5 times 3/3. Whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do the numerator, or whatever I do the numerator, I have to do the denominator. And that equals 9/15. So now I have 7/15 and 9/15. This is equivalent to 3/5. They equal the same amount. And I could show you how that looks, just so children understand it. So here I have 3/5, 1, 2, and 3, and I have 9/15, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and you see they take up an equal amount of shaded space. This is 3/5, this is 9/15. So that's how children can understand that 3/5 is still equivalent to 9/15. We've just created common denominators. So let's practice again. Here's another one. Let's do 16. So we'll do 9/16 and let's do 3/4. We need to create a common denominator. So we need to take this, 16 equals, you always go from the larger number, equals blank times and then the smaller denominator. So what times 4 equals 16? Well, 4, 8, 12, 16. So it is 4 times 4 equals 16. So that tells me I need to multiply my 3/4 times 4/4. 4 times 4 is 16. There's my common denominator. 4 times 3 is 12. So now I have 9/16, which was my original fraction, and I have 12/16, which is my common denominator fraction that I've created. And I can see that 9 is less than 12. So this is one of the strategies that the students had learned. Again, taking, let's do 5/9 and 7/27. So I would take 9 times blank equals 27. So the bigger denominator always has the equal sign right next to it. The smaller denominator is always multiplied times something else. Well, what times 9 equals 27? If I do 9 times 1, that's 9. 9 times 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 18. Anything before the down fingers, your tens, so it's 110. And anything after your down finger on both hands is your ones. Let's try 3. 9 times 3, there's 10, 20. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 27. So 9 times 3. That tells me to multiply 5/9 times 3/3, which equals 15/27. So this is my new common denominator fraction, and 7/27 was my original fraction right here. And if I were to compare these two, I no longer need to worry about the denominators. I look at the numerators. 15 is greater than 7. Now, another strategy that the students were taught, I call it cross-denominator multiplication. So let's say I have 5/8 and 3/5. There's nothing, I can't do 8 equals blank times 5. There's nothing that I multiply times 5 to equal 8. So I call this cross multiplication. Basically, I take 5/8 and I look at the other denominator. So I'm using my two denominators. I'm basically multiplying this fraction by 5/5 because that's the opposite denominator, and I'm multiplying this fraction by 8/8 because it's the opposite denominator. So 5/8 times 5/5 equals, and then 3/5 times 8/8 equals. Now, I don't even need to worry about the denominators. I know that they are even. 8 times 5 is the same thing as 5 times 8. They are equivalent. I don't need to worry about it. I'm just going to look at my multiplication for the numerators to decide which one is bigger or smaller. 5 times 5 is 25. 3 times 8 is 24. 25 is bigger than 24, so 5/8 is greater than 3/5. This is cross multiplication. I'm going to show you one more. Excuse me. 7/9 and 1/2. Now, there is nothing that I could do. 9 equals blank times 2. There's nothing times 2 that equals 9. So that's not easy. So I'm going to multiply. And I just say multiply this, the opposite denominator times the numerator, the opposite denominator times the numerator. I don't need to worry about the denominators if I'm comparing fractions in this case. So 7 times 2 equals 14. That's this numerator times this denominator. So I'll call that numerator 1 times denominator 2. Numerator 1 times denominator 2 gives you your new numerator. And this is denominator 1 and numerator 2. So this would be denominator 1 times numerator 2 equals a new numerator. So that's 9 times 1. 9 times 1 equals 9. Now that I know this, I can look at my numerators to compare. 14 is greater than 9, so 7/9 is greater than 1/2. And I'm able to compare that way. So this was common denominators. I do want the kids to practice on their common denominator, so I'm going to give a couple of sets. So here's our homework practice. Directions. Create common denominator fractions. Oops, I put factors. for the 4 sets of fractions. So here we have 1/2 and 4/6. I want you to create a common denominator fraction. So the same thing that I did here, creating a common denominator fraction. And you can use any strategy that you like. We have this strategy where we multiply, we fill it in and we figure out what we need to multiply to equal the other. Or they could use, I call it cross multiplication. You could multiply with the opposite, so we have 7/9, the opposite denominator, and 1/2. I would multiply this fraction by 2/2 because that is D2's denominator, and I would multiply this fraction by 9/9. That's 14/18. 7 times 2 is 14, 9 times 2 is 18. 9/18. 14/18 is greater than 9/18. So they can use any strategy that they want to solve. The next problem, 3/5 and 5/9. 6/8 and 2/4. 3/6 and 4/5. So these are the 4 problems that I would like them to practice creating common denominator fractions for these 4 sets. So they should end up with 2 fractions, just like I did here. They don't have to compare them. Let me see them right here. They don't have to compare them. They would just end up with the 2 fractions, just like this. So you see how we did this one? 7/15 and 3/5. 15 equals blank times 5. We found out it was 3. 3/5 times 3/3 equals 9/15. So here's our original, 7/15. Here's our new common denominator, 9/15. So I should end up with 2 fractions to prove the common denominators. Now the next thing that we worked on today was comparing fractions with symbols. Keep putting common. Compare fractions with symbols. Now we discussed a few ways to do this. We talked about fraction tiles, we talked about benchmarks and how to do this. So a benchmark is a fraction that we are all very familiar with. 1/2 is a great benchmark. We all know what half of a candy bar looks like, half of an ice cream sandwich. We know how to figure out half. We split everything in half. So they're using the benchmark of 1/2, and a benchmark is a common fraction that children know. So for example, if I were to have this, and we all know 1/2 would be to split it in half, and that's what this is. So that's why it's called a benchmark. And you would compare other fractions to the benchmark, and comparing using symbols. So here, if I wanted to compare 1/2 and 2/10, I would look at my manipulatives, and I would see that 1/2 takes up more space than 2/10, so 1/2 is greater than 2/10. It could also be written as 2/10 is less than 1/2, as long as the open part always faces the 1/2. And we also can write 2/10 is not equal to 1/2. So these are 3 answer options that might be on a test question. So manipulatives were one way. Now we don't have manipulatives at home, so this is a way to practice to get a better understanding visually, but we do have as our standard the priority of being able to draw it out for yourself. So here we want to compare 1/2 and 5/6. 1/2 and 5/6. So I would draw it out. And when I draw out my model, I have to make sure that my model is even in length for both bars. So I usually draw it like this and then draw a line through the middle. 1/2, pretty super simple, split it in half. So this one is 1/2. I would have one, let me get a different color. One of the boxes shaded. Next one is 5/6, so I need to make 6. and I have 5 of them shaded. And when I see that, I can evaluate that 5, 6 has more shaded area. So 5, 6 is greater than, the open part always faces the bigger fraction, the one that takes up more space. We usually say the alligator's hungry, it wants to eat more than 1/2. We can also say that 1/2 is less than 5, 6. The open part always faces the bigger number. And also 1/2 is not equal to 5, 6. These are the 3 possible answer choices. This is showing a model. Now this one's also good for visuals, but if your child has a hard time drawing straight or lining things up or making sure that things are even, this could cause a problem. So let's talk about comparing using multiplication. And this is very similar to creating common denominators. 1/2 and 5/8. So when I look at this, I have to say to myself, 2 times blank equals 8. That's saying, what am I going to multiply times that number to make this number? I know that that's 4. 2, 4, 6, 8. So that tells me I must multiply 1/2 times 4 over 4. 1/2 times 4 over 4 equals 1 times 4 is 4. 2 times 4 is 8. So here is my new common denominator. And I have 5/8, which was my original fraction up here. 5/8 is greater than 4/8, so mine would face like that. And this could be written as 4/8 is less than 5/8. It could also be written as 1/2 is less than 5/8. That was my original fraction right there. It could be written as 5/8 is greater than 1/2 or 4/8. And also 1/2 or 4/8 is not equal to 5/8. So we had these different ways to solve this. Now I want to talk about the exit ticket that we had. A lot of the kids got it. They did a great job. Some kids need to work on it some more, so I wanted to give the answer solution. So it stated that the children had to evaluate answers A, B, C, and D and choose which one was not correct. And I think this is what got them confused, which one was not correct if they missed it. So it gave me 5, 6 is greater than 1/2. We had 5, 6 is less than 1/2. 5, 6 is not equal to 1/2. And 3, 6 is equal to 1/2. So what we had to do is we had to evaluate all of these fractions and make sure that they were correct. So they could have drawn out a model here. And I know a lot of students did that. They supported that. And that's fine as long as they can draw it out. So here I have 1/2. Colored them with a different color. And I have 5, 6. All right. Now I can use this model actually for 3 of these, and then I would have to do another model for the other one. So let me go over here and just include that model so I can use that to compare that. And that was 3, 6. All right. So 5, 6 is greater than 1/2. Well, here's 5, 6. That's 1/2. We usually like to label them so we don't make a mistake. This is true. A is true. B, 5, 6 is less than 1/2. Well, that is not true. Not true because 5, 6 takes up more space. 5, 6 is not equal to 1/2. Well, that is true. And 3, 6 is equal to 1/2. That is true. So the answer for this one would be B. Now I'm not looking at the exit ticket, and I actually think the answer was A. So I may have flip-flopped these two when I was writing it. But this is how we would work it out. You could also go to using common denominators. 5, 6, 1/2. 6 equals blank times 2. That's 3. 2, 4, 6. Multiply this times 3. 5, 6, 1/2 times 3 over 3 equals 3, 6. So 5/6 is greater than 3/6. Well, 5/6 is greater than, and remember, that's 3/6 or 1/2, so that's correct. 5/6 is less than, using the math, I could figure that out. They're definitely not equal, and it gives me 3/6 here and 1/2, so I know that those are equal, so I could use common denominators to solve it as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully that gets everyone caught up, and I really do need them to practice those common denominators. I know they're tough, but we need to get that. That's a big part of 4th grade standards. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry the video was so long. I had to do 2 of them. Have a good